My name is Nick Pechenin. I'm Systems Designer at Larian Studios. I oversee balancing, character progression, and other game mechanics.
Hello guys, we're here at the Baldur's Gate 3 event. We got an exclusive look at the game already, with around 2 hours, 3 hours of gameplay. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Gameplay mechanics. Could you give us a quick overview? How was it working on the game already?
So we implemented D&D 5th edition very closely for Baldur's Gate 3, as closely as we could. The big themes of Baldur's Gate 3, mechanically speaking, are focus on the party. So the players will have a common combat turn in which all their party members can take an action, and the players' tactics will be based around them combining characters of different classes to figure out the way to victory. And another big theme is managing the randomness. So there's a concept of advantage in 5th edition D&D. This is a condition or effect that allows you to roll, if you have advantage, to roll to hit roll twice, for example, and pick the highest. If you can find a position in combat where you have advantage, for example, if you climb up a tower and you shoot down on the enemies, you have advantage. Generally, you will turn combat in your favor if you can do this consistently, and it's also important to put disadvantage on your enemies and make it harder for them.
Okay. Is it possible to turn that off? Like, will you implement an option to turn the randomness off, or is it a main part of the game?
Randomness and living with consequences of your actions is a big part of D&D in general, but we are exploring different difficulty options in which we might protect players from the worst of randomness. So, for example, we aren't very excited when a player just gets killed in combat when they didn't have a chance to respond. So this is something we're looking into right now.
Some part of the game really reminded us of Divinity Original Sin. Could you tell us a quick overview what is similar to Divinity, or what features could you take from Divinity to implement in the Baldur's Gate series?
So Baldur's Gate 3 is built in our 4.0 iteration of the engine. It's much improved over Divinity Original Sin. We've improved rendering and everything that has to do with visuals. They're at a much higher level right now. But we also overhauled a huge part of kind of mechanical heart of the engine to make it work with D&D rules, of course. And so we still have some elemental interactions there. Things that a DM would allow you to do, like light up smoke powder barrel or try to electrify a water puddle. But they're a lot scaled down compared to those two. They're a lot less prevalent. It's more focused on the actions of your party, the positioning, and seeking that advantage, playing to your strength, knowing your class as well.
How much depth into the gameplay the mechanics can players expect? Like, is it really for hardcore D&D veterans, or?
D&D 5th edition is set up in such a way that players can kind of pick how much they want to commit to the hardcore mechanics. There are classes that are much more straightforward than others. It kind of depends what players are looking for. So you can pick all wizards in your party, and then you have this giant set of tools that you will have to manipulate in combat, or you can go with like a bunch of warriors, and your things that you will be doing is going to be easier for you to master them, and they will be more centered around positioning and kind of relying on each other.
Are there any challenges you faced already when you implemented a new feature or a gameplay mechanic?
The biggest challenge for systems design department specifically was that it's vast. amount of spells, monsters that we had to work with is a lot more than in DOS 2. So because of that, we have to overhaul that big part of the engine to make sure that we can deal with the complexities that D&D is bringing to the table. So if you would go through the spells in D&D, every single spell has something that is unique about it in mechanical sense. So they usually have an element that you will not find in any other spell, which is amazing for the players because there's so much variety. But for us, we have to figure out a system in which we can build all of them without kind of manually hard coding each and single one of them. So that was a big challenge for us. I suppose it was also challenging for us to kind of approach randomness and figure out ways for the player to manipulate it a bit. So, for example, we're implementing the inspiration rules that you might know. Your DM might give you inspiration points that you will later be able to spend to re-roll an important roll that you really can't live with. So this is something we're introducing too.
You also added a lot of layers to the levels, like the verticality, and you can go a layer under it, like a dungeon, find a new dungeon, or go upstairs and get an advantage. How much layers can players expect? Like, can you find 3 or 4 stairs upwards or new dungeons?
Yeah. We did indeed overhaul the engine with this layering system. It's not hard-coded layers anymore. It's based on the actual geometry of a level, and because of that, finally, for the first time, you can actually go over the bridge and also under the bridge, which is sounds silly, but it's great for us. There is a big section of the game that you saw a small part of during the presentation. That is like this vast temple that is built like 4 or 5 layers, I think, deep, where it's very easy to kind of walk off to your death. And we try to incorporate this verticality in almost every single major encounter that we were trying to tackle. Usually you would have 2.5 at least layers, like at the very minimum, I would say, sometimes more.
Are there any situations when the dialogue or the NPCs conflict with the many options you already implemented? Like you got too many gameplay features already, and some NPCs are doing what you never expected, or something like that?
Our combat AI is written in a way that it analyzes what is there right now, kind of like in a very fact-based matter, so it's not scripted. So it continuously surprises us. It can shoot a barrel next to you instead of you with its bow. If it will realize that the barrel contains liquid that will create difficult terrain around you and will prevent you from getting to it. So sometimes you go like, wow, that AI has its mind of its own. But when we set up big systems for how NPCs interact with the world, we try to keep it close to the same rules that the player is using, and we try to keep them as systemic as possible. That cuts down on these edge cases that sprung up on you. So if NPCs open doors same way as you open doors, they would jump on an obstacle if they need to reach you, stuff like that.
Could you give us a glimpse on how this process behind the scenes work? Like, do you get a storyboard with the different mechanics and pinpoint everything, or how does this work?
So there are kind of 2 modes, two big areas in AI. It's the combat AI part, and then the kind of social generic interactions, as we call them. And for generic interactions, this is how citizens or commoners react to crimes, or how guards react when they see something when they're patrolling. Those reactions and behavior, it's based on the kind of locations we're planning to do, and also the kind of mood we're going for. So our scripting team would read through this core story doc. They will analyze it with their scripting lens and think about, okay, what kind of big settlements we have? What is the social structure there? Can the player just take everything? What is socially accepted there? Can you touch things? can you lockpick things? Can you sneak around? Some NPCs will get mad at you just for trying sneaking because it's not what normal people do. Like if you see someone sneaking, they're up to no good. So there's a lot of work involved in trying to formalize kind of believable behavior, right? And then the combat side of it is more married to what spells you have, what major mechanics you have, and how AI will have to score them and conceptualize it, like see all of the actions that it has in combat and kind of pick what is the most interesting, what brings most utility to the table.
So this last question, is there one specific feature in the game that you really want players to notice, to see, to use?
Well, my favorite spell right now, with which I mess around the most, is Mage Hand. You can summon a little floating hand that can do a lot of dirty stuff for you. And because we allow the player to throw any item in the world, and we allow player to attempt to shove anyone, this can lead to a lot of mayhem if you can summon that hand somewhere and start throwing things or shoving it around. I just love the kind of weird systemic things that can come out of it.
Okay, thanks for taking your time. It was great.
Thank you.